Hey guys, so the next story is one of the creepiest ones that I've read so far. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Here we go. 2 years ago, a friend of mine, Yuta, asked me if I could help as he was moving out of his apartment. As a thank you, he promised he'd take me out for some sushi, so I agreed. On the day of the move, we met up at his place along with two other friends, Kenji and Makoto, and started packing and cleaning. Yuta was moving into a small one-bedroom apartment in the far corner of the first floor of a two-story apartment building. When you walk into the apartment, the bath was to the left and the toilet next door to it. To the right was the kitchen, and in front was a glass door with a wood frame which led into an area of about 18 square meters. That night, the four of us had some drinks, ate sushi, and slept on the floor. The next morning, Kenji, Makoto, and I took the train home. Sitting in the train, Makoto said, "Hey, did you notice that there was a shrine right next to Yuta's apartment? You might experience something weird there." I remember us joking around about that fact, or put more correctly, I couldn't forget that conversation after what happened. A week after moving into his new place, we were all having lunch together at uni when Kenji asked Yuta, "How's the new apartment going? It was a pretty nice place." Yuta replied, Well, I guess the room's big enough and it's close to the train station." We all felt like something was on his mind, but he was having a hard time saying it, so I asked jokingly, "What? Did something happen? Did you see a ghost or something?" Yuta replied, "Nah, nothing like that, but I keep finding long hair on my floors." So we all started saying, "What the hell, you're bringing some chick into your room? Since when?" The hair was probably stuck to your clothes or something, and you tracked it back into your apartment, etc. Kenji and I didn't really give him too much crap, but Yuta responded by saying he hadn't been bringing any girl over to his place. Even if you discover someone else's hair in your apartment, it's not something to get too freaked out over, and Yuta ended the conversation by saying, "Well, there's nothing weird other than that, and it's not like I see hair all the time, just sometimes." Yuta was fine for a while, but after about 2 weeks, we saw that something was clearly off. He looked exhausted and even looked like he'd lost a bit of weight. He had been coming to class every day, so it wasn't like he was sick, but maybe something was on his mind and he couldn't sleep well. The three of us decided to invite him for some drinks and ask him if he was okay. We were having drinks, and when we asked him what was wrong, he said, "Not sure if you guys will believe me, but remember I told you about those strands of hair in my room? And you guys said that maybe I tracked them into my room via my clothes or something? At first I thought you guys were right, but something's not adding up. If they actually were stuck on me, then all the hair should be different. Some long, some curly, some straight, some short. You guys get the point. When I looked at the hair in my room, they all looked to be from the same person. Not only that, it seems like there's more of them and less time between each occurrence. It's bothering me so much that I can't relax when I'm home. I'm really scared." We couldn't sit there and just believe every word he said because it was such a weird story, so we responded by saying, "Well, maybe it's just a bunch of coincidences and you're being paranoid." Yuta looked real serious and said, "Nah, I'm sure that's not it. Something is really going on in my apartment." Makoto then suggested that we all go to Yuta's house and check it out together. Yuta looked somewhat relieved and replied, "Yeah, I think that'll clear things up." We all left the bar and headed to his apartment. When we got there, we all went quiet. Yuta was right. There was hair in the sink, bath, toilet, all over the room. Yuta said, "Guys, there was no hair when I left to meet you guys tonight." Makoto said, "Alright, let's collect them all and compare the length and color." Half scared and half intrigued, I agreed. "You're right. We might be able to tell whether they're from the same person or not." So we all started to collect all the hair. 10 minutes later, we had all collected enough hair. We put them on a piece of paper and started comparing the strands somewhat haphazardly. We disregarded those that were obviously different lengths and the pubes. By the time we were done separating the hair, the atmosphere had gotten heavy and there was a slight chill hanging in the air. Kenji looked at all of us one by one and broke the silence by saying, "They all look the same, right?" We were by no means an expert, and to our naked eye, the length, color, feel of it all looked like it had come from one person. All of us nodded in unison. Makoto said, "Shit." "Oh my god, guys, what should I do? What should I do?" Yuta started freaking out. I've never seen any ghosts before, nor had I ever experienced anything like this, so I told myself that there was a rational explanation and told Yuta this. Can't be a ghost or anything. I mean, look, we have actual real hair here. There has to be some explanation to all of this. It was already late by this time, so we all agreed that we'd look into it again another day and decided to go home. As we opened the door and headed to the entrance, Kenji went pale and stopped in his tracks. "What the hell? Guys, shit, you gotta look at this." And he pointed to the bath. We all turned to look and saw that there was a full fist of hair on the floor. I still can't forget that bone-chilling cold that trickled down my back when I saw it. We almost knocked each other out, scrambling to get out of the apartment. We went to a nearby family restaurant, and as we started to calm down, we started talking about what had just happened. We were all sure that we'd picked up all the hair around the apartment. Even if we hadn't, there was no way any of us could have missed that large amount of hair. Which only means one thing. We picked the hair up, and somehow, while we were all in the other room talking about it, a new batch of hair fell into the bathroom. There wasn't anyone else in the apartment other than the four of us. We would have heard it if someone had walked in from outside. All of us were terrified. We stayed at the restaurant until morning, and Yuta went to Kenji's house because he didn't want to go back to his place. Makoto and I went home. Seeing it was a Saturday, we all decided to get some sleep and meet up again later that day. I woke up in the late afternoon and got a text from Kenji a short while later. "Let's meet at the same restaurant at 7 p.m. We all met up and decided to go back to Yuta's apartment. All of the lights were still on when we got there because we ran out of the house the night before without turning them off. Yuta unlocked the door and opened it. I felt like I was floating, felt like I wasn't breathing. We noticed a few strands of hair on the floor by the entrance. None of us said anything. In the toilet, in the kitchen, hallway, there was hair everywhere. No one could have gotten in after we left last night, but it was everywhere. I was praying that someone was just pranking us. With the fear and adrenaline coursing through my body, I felt like I was dreaming. We checked everywhere except the main room. As we started to make our way, it was Yuta. It was as if he was trying to scream but couldn't find his voice. "What's wrong?" I asked. His face was frozen in fear as he lifted his finger and pointed towards the glass-paneled door that leads into the room. We all looked towards it. On the table, we saw the piece of paper with the strands of hair that we collected last night. Nothing was out of place. "There's nothing there," I said. Makoto was the one who replied, "The window." The window pane was made so that the top half was regular glass and you could see through it, and the bottom half was frosted glass. Yuta lived on the first floor, so I guess it was to prevent people from being able to see into his room. Anyway, I couldn't see anything through the top half. It was dark out, so just some washing on the line. But the bottom half. There was someone, or something, there. She was in white long sleeves and was sitting by the window. Even though we couldn't see her clearly because of the frosted glass, we could see that she had long hair. I instinctively thought that all the hair belonged to this woman. Thinking back now, I think it was a real person, and that in itself is scary as hell. But at that time, I was sure I'd seen an actual ghost. We had all lost our voice and quickly but quietly ran out of the apartment, not wanting this thing to notice we were there. After this occurrence, Yuta slept over our house in turn until he could find another place to move into. We, of course, helped him pack his things again and move out, but we were so paranoid and scared that we did some superstitious offerings to the thing we saw. We weren't sure if she was real or not, so it made sense to us. We put some sake in a cup and left it in the room, and we poured some salt in all four corners of the room. When we went back the following day, the color of the sake had changed into a white, cloudy liquid, and the salt had gone rock hard. But that might be because of the humidity or something. Thankfully, nothing happened after Yuta moved into a new place, but he still feels something when he sees hair on the floor. Seeing that his old place was next to a shrine and not knowing whether that woman was real or not, we're left wondering. But maybe it's for the best that we don't know. There was a small park next to the elementary school that I was attending, and in it, a very long slide. It looked out of place because the park itself was tiny. Lots of kids played in the park during the day, and I was there almost every day too. There was an urban legend surrounding this slide. It was that if you go down at 6 p.m., that you'd land in an alternate world and you won't ever be able to come back. I know, it sounds like some parents somewhere coughed this one up to make sure the kids go home before dark. Anyway, we were all playing in the park and we heard the school bells ring, signaling that it was 5 p.m. The kids gathered their belongings and slowly started heading back home. I usually go home at that time too, but my friends and I were having way too much fun and continued to hang out until one of them said, "Oh man, I gotta go home or my mom's gonna kill me." We looked up at the clock and it was 5:30. All of my friends started heading home when the urban legend popped into my mind. I grabbed my friend Kenta's arm. "Hey, do you want to stay with me until 6? Let's see if that urban legend is true." He didn't look enthusiastic, but agreed nonetheless. I asked my other friends, but they all said no, saying their parents were scarier than the legend. Kenta and I continued to talk sitting on top of the slide. The sun started to set, and it was getting dark. Our conversation slowed, and we both became silent. I want to go home, I thought to myself, but I was the one who invited Kenta, so I didn't say anything. I'm sure he felt the same way. At 5:58, Kenta suggested that we do rock, paper, scissors to decide who should go down the slide first. He lost, so it was determined that he go down first. The school bell rang again. It was 6 p.m. Kenta went down the slide. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and when he got down, he called up to me, "Hey, come down." "Okay, I'm coming." Just as I was about to go down, my mum came running into the park. "What do you think you're doing staying out so late? Let me slide just one last time and I promise I'll come home." "No, you come down now." She was pissed, and I didn't want to push it, so I climbed down the steps instead of sliding down. "Kenta, you need to go home too. You shouldn't be out this late," my mum said to Kenta. "Hey, come down," Kenta continued to yell out. My mum called Kenta's mum to come pick him up. I ran over to him saying, "I'm so sorry I couldn't slide down. I promise I'll do it next time." He didn't even look at me. He kept staring up at the slide, yelling out, "Hey, come down." He kept repeating himself over and over again in his excited voice. Kenta's mom eventually came to the park. "Thank you so much for giving me a call." She scolded Kenta, who was still yelling, tugged on his arm, and walked out of the park. When we got home, Mum gave me another lecture. I didn't sleep well that night from her voice echoing in my ears. Kenta was absent from school the next day. Maybe he was mad at me because I didn't slide down the day before. I felt bad, so decided to go see him after school. When I rang the doorbell, his mum answered. "Oh, hi, what are you doing here?" She looked disheveled, and her voice sounded exhausted. I told her I wanted to see Kenta, and she replied, He's not feeling too well. Hey, I wanted to ask you." "Oh, I'm so sorry for bothering you." I interrupted her and ran home. Kenta didn't come to school after that, and he transferred away 2 weeks later. I tried calling his mum several times, but she never answered. I never went to his house after that one visit, but from the entrance I could hear it. At first I thought it was the sound of the telly, but then I heard it clearly. "Come, come down." He wasn't yelling anymore. It sounded like a low growl. It wasn't his voice. This happened one winter, shortly after I started living alone. I was working at a bar and got home late. I was blowing into my freezing hands to warm them up, watching the puff of air rise into the air. I lived in an old apartment building with only one flight of stairs that led up to the second floor. Someone was sitting on the stairs. As I got closer, I could see that it was a young woman. She was wearing a long coat. Does she live here? I'd never seen her before that day. She looked to be in her 20s, had heavy makeup and expensive looking jewelry. She was obviously a hostess. Slightly nodding my head to say good evening, I started to walk past her when she said, "Do you want a cigarette?" Huh? Not knowing how to reply to the sudden question, I looked at her. She had a sly smile on her face and was holding out a cigarette towards me. Didn't know whether I should take it or not, but she wasn't half bad looking, so I decided to take it. I took it from her and she lit the cigarette for me. Not wanting to continue this awkwardness, I thanked her quickly and continued up the stairs. I was thinking absent-mindedly how it would be nice if she lived in the same block. When I got to the second floor, the cigarette dropped out of my freezing fingers, right into a puddle. Damn. I let out a sigh as I watched the cigarette fizz out. I took the keys out of my pocket and made my way to the entrance. Something was off, and I stopped short before unlocking and opening the door. It was the post. The papers that were stuffed into the post box and the door were gone. I know it was there before I left for work because I told myself that I needed to throw it out. Where did they go? I lifted the flap to the mailbox when I smelt it, a smell that was out of place. My entire body went stiff, not because of the cold winter weather, but from fear. I could hear the blood gushing in my ears and my knees went weak. It took all the strength I had to run back to the cigarette that I dropped earlier. I picked it up and threw it as far as I could out of the second floor. I then took the phone and dialed the fire department. As I put the phone to my ear, I looked down the stairs to where the woman had been sitting. She wasn't there. Shit. Shit, 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 shit. I could hear footsteps running away along with angry yelling echoing against the dark sky. Hello? What's wrong? Hello? A man was talking into the phone. Is this the fire station? I stammered in response. There was a lot of commotion after that. The firefighters came and checked everything. I just did as I was told, and before I knew it, the sun was coming up. The smell that wafted out of my mailbox was gas. When I realized what it was, I ran to the cigarette that had fallen into the puddle. I knew it was out, but I threw it out far just to be safe. If I hadn't noticed that the mail was gone, I wouldn't have noticed the smell. If I was still puffing on the cigarette and opened the door. I talked with the police and firemen. They suggested that maybe it was just a gas leak, but the actions of that woman was too suspicious. I'd never seen her before today, though. So how did she know where I lived, and how did she get in? I couldn't figure it out. I told the police about her, but they were skeptical, and I never heard back from them. Then I remembered something that might explain all of this. I didn't want to remember it, but I couldn't help it. My dad died in an accident. He was away on business, and the apartment he was renting caught on fire. It was due to a gas leakage. It has to be a coincidence, doesn't it?